The laughter was faint at first, the soft titter of champagne-filled mouths behind manicured hands, but Evelyn heard every note of it as the pen touched the paper. The marble-floored courthouse felt like a stage, and she, its unwilling actress, framed by gold light pouring through tall windows. Across from her sat Charles, his smirk rehearsed, his cufflinks gleaming like trophies. Each signature felt like peeling back a layer of her skin until she was raw and bare before them all. But when the final page turned, she did not cry. Instead, she closed the folder, lifted her chin and looked past Charles to the figure waiting at the door. Dominic Vale, tailored in obsidian silk, his gaze cutting through the murmurs like a blade through water. The laughter faltered. She rose, her heels echoing on marble, and in that sound was something unmistakable. Rebirth disguised as surrender. Outside the courthouse, the autumn air bit through the last warmth of daylight. Evelyn stood still for a moment, surrounded by the chaos of flashing bulbs and murmured speculation. Each journalist's question was a stone thrown into still water, yet she remained calm. The quiet eye of her own storm. Dominic stepped closer, shielding her from the crowd without touching her, a gesture that spoke of both possession and protection. His voice, low and smooth, brushed against her like silk over steel. "You made them watch you rise." She looked up at him, the weight of the past dissolving into something sharper, a beginning not born of hope, but of choice. When she finally smiled, it wasn't sweet. It was sovereign. The penthouse was hollow when she returned, not empty of things, but of meaning. The echo of her footsteps traveled across marble floors once filled with laughter, deceit, and the slow erosion of love. Evelyn walked through each room, fingers grazing furniture that now felt alien. On the mirrored dresser sat the remnants of her former life: designer perfume, a half-empty glass of champagne, a torn photograph of her wedding day. She tore the picture cleanly, no hesitation, no drama, just clarity. The skyline outside shimmered like temptation itself, and below, Dominic's car waited. She whispered to her reflection, "You don't belong here anymore." The woman in the glass smiled back, as if already gone. Dominic didn't ask her to dinner. He summoned her to strategy. In a candlelit restaurant closed to the public, their table overlooked the city skyline like a throne above the world. He slid a small velvet box toward her without ceremony, his voice steady as the hum of the city below. "They think you're broken," he said. "Let's show them what a rebuilt woman looks like." Inside the box, a ring unlike any she had seen. Black diamond, sharp as a promise. She didn't ask what it meant. She simply slipped it on, watching the light bend around it like obedience. For the first time that night, Dominic's composure cracked, a hint of admiration or perhaps surrender. By morning, the world knew. Evelyn Mercer, engaged to Dominic Vale, blared across every gossip feed, a digital coronation wrapped in scandal. She watched the news from her hotel balcony, coffee in hand. The city spread beneath her like conquered territory. Beneath the noise, her phone buzzed with unread messages, apologies, accusations, invitations. She didn't answer any. Instead, she turned off the screen and let the silence linger. The war had begun, not with fury, but with elegance. Somewhere in the city, Charles was reading the same headline, his smirk curdling into disbelief. Evelyn smiled faintly. Power, she realized, was not taken. It was reclaimed. The gala at the Marlowe Hotel was less a celebration than a battlefield, sequins and smiles concealing sharpened intent. Evelyn entered on Dominic's arm, her posture regal, her silence louder than any rumor whispered behind a champagne flute. The cameras adored her, though she no longer sought their affection. Every flash captured not a victim but a myth reborn. Across the ballroom, Charles froze mid-toast, glass suspended like a fragile truce about to shatter. The orchestra swelled, the chandeliers flared, and Evelyn felt the weight of her new ring catch the light. For a fleeting instant, she wasn't sure whether Dominic was her savior or her successor. But when he leaned close and murmured, "Let them see," she obeyed. not as a follower, but as a queen reclaiming her throne. After the gala, Dominic led Evelyn to the hotel's mirror-lined atrium. Empty now, echoing only their footsteps and the distant pulse of music. She faced her reflection multiplied 100-fold, each image of herself colder, stronger, more untouchable. Dominic watched her with a strategist's focus. "You've already won them," he said. "Now you need to make them afraid to lose you." His tone was both compliment and command. Evelyn stepped closer, their reflections merging into one distorted silhouette. "And you?" she asked. "Are you afraid to lose me too?" For the first time, he looked away. In that flicker, she saw not power, but something far rarer. Vulnerability disguised as control. Morning found them in Dominic's penthouse, the city stretching beneath tinted glass like a living chessboard. Files, clippings, and digital profiles lay scattered across the table, everyone a name, a power, a threat. Evelyn traced a manicured finger along a photo of Vivienne, her expression unreadable. "She'll come for me next," she said. Dominic smirked. "Let her. I want her too." Their partnership pulsed with danger. She was learning his world too fast, and he admired it too much. When she leaned over the table pointing to Charles' name on a dossier, Dominic realized he was no longer the teacher. The Queen had begun moving her own pieces. Vivienne Cross went live at noon, her voice trembling with manufactured sincerity. She painted Evelyn as manipulative, Dominic as predatory, a pairing of ambition and deceit. The interview trended instantly. But by the time she finished, Evelyn had already prepared her counterstrike. Dominic's media network released unseen footage. Vivienne and Charles at the villa weeks before the divorce, their laughter echoing over spilled secrets. Public opinion turned in minutes. Evelyn watched from the back seat of a car, face calm as the world she once feared began tearing itself apart. "You fight like a poet," Dominic said beside her. "No," she answered. "I fight like a woman who remembers." That night, Evelyn hosted her first event under her new name, Evelyn Vale. The rooftop garden shimmered under string lights, the skyline stretching like applause. Every guest came to witness her return, each smile concealing curiosity, envy, or fear. She lifted her glass, voice steady as marble. "To endings that look like beginnings," she said. The crowd clapped, the cameras rolled, and somewhere in the noise she felt her pulse quicken, not from love or victory, but from the dizzying power of both. Across the terrace, Dominic raised his glass too, his gaze unwavering. They had become something unstoppable, and perhaps something unforgivable. The Vale Foundation dinner was meant to cement their legacy, a night of glitter, charity, and calculated charm. Beneath chandeliers dripping with crystal, Evelyn moved like a queen carved from light, her laughter rehearsed, her gaze sharp. But as speeches rose and cameras turned, she caught Dominic's eyes fixed not on her, but on Margot Vale, his mother, whispering at his ear with the precision of a puppeteer. Evelyn smiled to hide the sting. Power, she realized, never belonged fully to those who wore it. It answered only to those who knew how to whisper. When the applause swelled, she lifted her glass toward Dominic across the room. The gesture was graceful and full of quiet defiance. Margot Vale didn't believe in coincidence, least of all women who rose too fast. She invited Evelyn to tea the next afternoon, in a drawing room lined with relics of 100 victories and losses. "You remind me of myself," she said, pouring tea without looking up. "And that's not a compliment." Evelyn met her gaze calmly. "Dominic thinks I'm the one who needs protection," she replied. Margot's smile was as thin as porcelain. "He's wrong. You're the danger. You just don't know it yet." The silence between them pulsed like a duel fought without weapons. In that silence, Evelyn understood. This woman had not built her empire by yielding. By evening, the world shifted again. An anonymous leak hit every major news outlet. Internal documents from Dominic's empire, implicating him in quiet bribery, silenced scandals, and corporate espionage. Evelyn read the reports in disbelief, watching his empire burn across the scrolling headlines. When she turned, he was already in the doorway, eyes dark with calculation rather than surprise. "You think it was me," she said quietly. He didn't answer. Silence between them had become their sharpest language. He approached, stopping inches away. "If you did," he murmured, "I almost admire you." She wanted to deny it, but a small, traitorous part of her almost wished she could. They met that night on the terrace, the air thick with rain and exhaustion. The city pulsed below, indifferent to the empire trembling above it. Evelyn's voice broke the stillness first. "Was any of it real?" she asked. Dominic turned slowly, rain streaking down his face like confessions he refused to make. "It was all real," he said, "until it wasn't. Lightning flashed. For an instant, they looked like statues carved from opposing faiths." She stepped closer, trembling not with fear, but with fury restrained. "Then tell me," she whispered, "which of us you'll destroy first, me or yourself?" Dominic's silence was the answer neither of them could live with. When the storm cleared, Dominic's empire survived, bruised, bloodied, but alive. The media spun it as resilience, yet Evelyn knew the truth. Survival was not triumph, only postponement. Alone in her dressing room, she removed the black diamond ring and set it on the vanity. For the first time, she saw her reflection without it. Still regal, still fierce, but unburdened, she whispered to herself. "You don't need their empire anymore." The door behind her opened slightly. Dominic's voice drifted in, soft, uncertain. "Where will you go?" She smiled, without turning. "Everywhere you can't follow." And when the door clicked shut, the sound was not loss. It was liberation. Morning arrived without fanfare. Only the hush that follows collapse. Evelyn woke to the quiet hum of the city, a softer rhythm than the noise she once commanded. The world had moved on, and for the first time she did not need to chase it. She brewed her own coffee, no staff, no cameras, no audience. In that simplicity was something holy. The mirror reflected not the polished heiress, but the survivor who had outlasted empires. Her phone vibrated with unread messages. She turned it face down. The day outside was hers, small, ordinary, and unclaimed. She stepped onto the balcony, inhaled the cool air, and whispered, "Start again." Evelyn rented a forgotten warehouse at the city's edge, its air thick with dust and possibility. Here she began again, not as someone's wife or headline, but as a designer of futures. Drafts, fabrics, blueprints covered the tables. Her hands rediscovered the rhythm of creation. She gathered a small team, artists, analysts, dreamers who had also been dismissed. Together they spoke of building a foundation for women who had been silenced, offering education, grants, and second chances. The echo of hammers replaced gossip. Each nail struck into wood sounded like a heartbeat, proof she was alive in her own making. Months later, the world saw her again, on her own terms. A live interview streamed globally from her foundation's new headquarters. No diamonds, no theatrics, just a charcoal suit and unflinching eyes. The reporter asked if she regretted anything. Evelyn smiled faintly. "Regret keeps you looking backward," she said. "I'm too busy building forward." The words traveled faster than scandal ever had. Viewers saw not a fallen socialite, but a voice steady enough to quiet noise. Somewhere, those who once laughed paused, unsure when she had stopped needing their approval. Charles came to her office unannounced, smaller somehow. The arrogance dulled. He spoke of apologies, of misunderstanding, of nostalgia. Evelyn listened without emotion, her hands folded on the desk she had built herself. "You taught me something," she said evenly. "That losing everything isn't an end, It's freedom. He left with no argument. When the door closed, she exhaled. Not relief, not triumph, but closure. Power, she realized, was never meant to be owned. It was meant to be used wisely, and then released. That night, Evelyn hosted a gathering by the river. No press, only the people whose lives her foundation had touched. Lanterns floated on the water, each carrying a wish written by those who once had none. She watched them drift, reflections rippling like memories made gentle. The city hummed in the distance, but here there was peace. A young girl tugged at her sleeve and handed her a lantern. "For you," she said. Evelyn released it last, the flame rising toward the stars. For the first time, the future felt quiet enough to believe in. The foundation had grown faster than anyone expected. Branches in 5 cities, investors eager to attach their names to her success, and cameras waiting at every ribbon cutting. Evelyn knew the glow of admiration could turn to scrutiny overnight. Still, she pressed forward, her speeches no longer read from cards, but carried by conviction. Yet beneath the applause lingered unease. The quiet question of whether she had built something real or merely another empire of mirrors. In every new signature, in every donation pledged, she felt the tremor of power demanding balance. The first storm came quietly. An article questioning the foundation's finances, claiming her influence had outpaced her oversight. The piece was measured, almost polite, but its precision cut deep. Evelyn gathered her board in silence, listening as voices rose in panic. She didn't argue or defend. She observed, noting who spoke from fear and who from principle. When the room fell quiet, she said simply, "If there's a truth we've ignored, we find it, and we face it." The air shifted. Leadership wasn't about control anymore. It was about courage. Rather than hide, Evelyn stepped into the open. A televised town hall, unfiltered questions from citizens whose lives her programs claimed to help. Some thanked her. Others demanded more. She listened to both. "A foundation is not a throne," she said. "It's a bridge, and I'm still learning how to build it." The room fell quiet, not from obedience, but from respect. Vulnerability, she learned, carried its own kind of strength, one that no title could command. The audit confirmed what she feared. A trusted deputy had funneled funds through shell accounts, hiding losses to preserve reputation. Betrayal stung, but Evelyn refused to bury it. She called a press conference herself, admitting the truth before anyone could twist it. The headlines called it unprecedented, a leader exposing her own failure. Yet, as the cameras rolled, she felt strangely free. Integrity, she realized, wasn't about staying untarnished. It was about walking through fire without disguising the burns. Months later, Evelyn addressed a global summit on ethical leadership. She spoke without notes, her words steady as stone. "We mistake perfection for trust," she said. "But people don't need perfection. They need honesty that endures." Applause swelled, not in frenzy but in gratitude. When she stepped off stage, she didn't feel triumphant. She felt anchored. The weight she carried no longer came from others' expectations, but from her own choice to bear responsibility with grace. Outside, dawn broke over the city again, and this time, she walked toward it, unafraid. When the applause faded, the hall sounded like the inside of a seashell, hollow, reverberating with echoes of words already losing weight. Evelyn remained on stage, while crews rolled cables and folded banners. The air smelled faintly of metal and paper. She thought of the thousands who would never hear these speeches, yet live with their consequences. Opening her notebook, she sketched circles connecting foundations, agencies, and governments, a map of cooperation instead of competition. For the first time, ambition felt generous. She whispered to herself, "If power is shared, it survives." Her voice disappeared into the cavernous room, but she smiled anyway, because she finally believed it. Weeks later, she faced a table shaped like an ellipse, Symbol of unity, they said, though arguments still found corners to hide in. Representatives from 5 nations debated ownership of the new alliance. Evelyn listened, jotting notes, waiting for their fury to spend itself. When silence came, she slid her proposal forward. Leadership would rotate yearly. Accountability shared by all. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the room. Surrender was not a language they knew. If this fails, she said evenly, it fails together. If it works, it belongs to no one. So it can belong to everyone. The stillness that followed was not opposition, but respect being born. Months later, the alliance had taken form. Evelyn traveled to a rural valley to see its first project, an education center rising from scaffolds and red earth. Children ran past with paint on their hands, writing words of hope across concrete walls. A young teacher thanked her but added, "It's ours now, not yours." The statement struck her as the purest victory. Watching the sunlight flood the half-built classrooms, she understood that legacy was not about permanence, but about release. The foundation no longer needed her shadow to stand tall. It needed only her faith to let it breathe. Her car slowed at the courthouse where the story had once begun. The steps were cleaner now, the marble lighter in the sun, yet the memory clung to the air. Through the window, she saw another woman standing hesitantly at the entrance, a man beside her, a pen in his hand. Evelyn asked the driver to stop. She stepped out, letting the crowd's noise swallow her. The city felt smaller, more human, its rhythm steady and kind. She did not enter the courthouse. She simply looked once, nodded to the ghosts, and turned away. The past no longer pulled, it simply existed, a page she had already turned. On the foundation's anniversary, she invited no press, only those who had built, taught, and healed beside her. The rooftop glowed with lanterns instead of spotlights. Volunteers passed candles from hand to hand until the air shimmered with small suns. Evelyn lifted one lantern, its flame trembling like a heartbeat, and placed her black diamond ring inside before releasing it to the wind. "It was never about whose name it bore," she said softly. "It's about what we choose to carry forward." The lantern drifted upward, joined by hundreds more until the sky looked like forgiveness made visible. Months after the lantern's ceremony, the city wakes beneath pale spring light. Evelyn rises early and walks through the headquarters of the cooperative network she helped build. The offices hum with quiet purpose. New leaders meet, decide, and laugh without her needing to direct them. She observes, unseen, recognizing that her creation now belongs to others. Passing a window, she sees her reflection overlapped by the skyline, a visual echo of where it all began. Instead of nostalgia, she feels serenity. She leaves a note on her desk. "Keep building forward." Then she steps outside into the ordinary day, blending into the city she once ruled from above. Late afternoon, light filters through a riverside park. Children run along the paths where the foundation has built new gardens and learning spaces. A bronze sculpture stands at the center, 2 open hands releasing a small sphere, cast from melted metal of old jewelry donated for the project. Among them, Evelyn's ring, now transformed, unrecognizable, part of something shared. She sits on a nearby bench sketching designs for future projects, unnoticed by the families who now benefit from her vision. A volunteer stops to thank her. She simply nods, smiling. The camera rises as her figure grows smaller against the flowing river, the city behind her shimmering in the gold of early evening. The laughter heard faintly is no longer cruel, its life continuing. Some time has passed. The foundation's work is now routine life for a new generation. Inside a classroom built from her project, a young teacher tells students about the woman who began it all, showing them the sculpture by the river. The camera drifts to a framed photograph of Evelyn at an early groundbreaking ceremony. Smiling, sleeves rolled, sunlight in her eyes. Outside, unseen by the class, Evelyn walks past the window carrying folders for another small community venture. The children's voices echo faintly. She pauses, smiles, and keeps walking. Her story has folded seamlessly into the lives she helped shape. Evening returns to the city. From a high overlook above the river, the skyline glows in countless windows. Evelyn stands watching as streetlights ignite one by one. Each small spark a reflection of every person now leading in her place. She closes her notebook, sets it on a public bench, and walks away toward the descending path. A passerby notices the notebook and opens it. Inside are only blank pages except for the first line. Begin anywhere. The camera tilts up as the last light fades into the deep blue of night. The city alive beneath. The laughter of distant streets merges with the hum of the river, and the screen drifts to quiet. At dawn, the city is still. A maintenance worker unlocks the park gates by the river. The bronze sculpture glows with dew. Beside it, a small child places a fresh wildflower into one of the open hands. The gesture is unremarkable, unseen by cameras, yet it completes everything. Evelyn began. Across the river, she appears for a moment on a tram heading out of the city, reading from a blank notebook, identical to the one she left behind. The tram disappears into morning light. The frame lingers on the sculpture as sunlight turns its surface from bronze to pure gold, then fades to white.